Well, SUVs are definitely a hit with the Indian car buyer, but MPVs with their ability to seat additional passengers are often a more practical option. Now, Maruti and Mahindra are betting big on this segment with their recently launched Marazzo and the all-new Ertiga. Well, we're pitting these two newcomers against an old winner, the Renault Lodgy, and let's see how this three-way battle pans out. Of course, you'll be asking the obvious question, where's the Innova? But the fact is, it's a larger vehicle and sits in a different price band. So that's why it isn't here. The Lodgy and the Marazzo in this comparo are the top-end variants which offer captain seats. The Ertiga is a top-end too, but only offers a bench seat option for the middle row. Well, it's all about moving people, so let's dive into that first. The Autocar team did what it always does and get in and out of all the seats in all kinds of permutations and combinations to evaluate what they're like. Let's begin with what we found, starting with the oldest one in the lot, the Lodgy. Now, getting into the third row of the Lodgy is easy enough with a one-touch tumble mechanism for the middle row. Well, you can sit three in the rearmost seat of the Lodgy, but as you can see, it's a very, very tight fit back here. You have the rear AC vents. Window area is large enough, but you sit very, very knees up over here because the floorboard is very high and honestly, it's not a very comfortable place to be.
So getting into the Lodgy's middle row is not much of a problem. As you can tell, the floor height isn't all that high. While the version with us has fixed middle row seats, Renault has launched an updated Lodgy with sliding middle rows, giving it the same level of flexibility as its rivals. And you also have the option to recline the seat back. Although the Lodgy has enough room in this comparison, it just pales against the Ertiga and the Marazzo. Moving to the Ertiga, it does have a one-touch operation to slide only the curbside seat forward.
Well, as you can see, the third row is a bit difficult getting into compared to the other two cars because this seat doesn't really flip. It just slides forward and the seat back goes forward. So it's more constricted than the other two for access.
Getting into the Ertiga's middle row is really convenient. The floor is nice and low, and what I also really like is that you get a brilliant view out. Just look at how large the window is. Of the other cool things, the aircon vents are nicely positioned. I have the flexibility to adjust the backrest.
Squashing the rear passenger.
And I can also make a bit more space. Now I'm comfortable. Renuka, are you better off now?
Yes, I definitely am better off, but I have the flexibility of making this even better because once I recline the backrest, even the seat base moves a little bit back, so I open up more legroom, and I have to say, in this position, it's extremely comfortable. I wouldn't mind being stuck here on a long journey.
Despite being the smallest as far as external dimensions go, the Ertiga opens space inside impressively, falling just a tad short of the Marazzo. Let's take a look at what it offers. The access to the third row is also from the curbside, but with the easiest to use one-touch tumble mechanism. So getting onto the middle row of the Marazzo isn't as convenient as the other two. It's a bit of a step up, but once you get inside, you will note that this is a significantly larger MPV. There's generally more space in every direction, and what you'll really like is the good view out. The windows are large, and it's also got these nice sun blinds, which is a nice premium touch. The top air conditioning unit also allows for very uniform cooling, which is again another nice thing. The seats are very well finished, but for a healthier person like me, they do come across as a bit too snug. You can recline the backrest.
And remember, there's someone behind you.
Oh, sorry. And well, to make space for the rearmost passenger, you can also move the seats back and forth. At the rearmost position, the middle row does have the advantage on middle row knee room. Over to you, Renuka.
Well, as you saw a little bit earlier, sitting three abreast here is, I think, the easiest. But the fact that these seats are contoured doesn't really make it comfortable for all three passengers because the side two have a lot of the side bolstering intruding into their seat space, and the center passenger really sits a little all over the contours. So, though it has more space than the Lodgy, it really isn't ideal as well, and you do sit more knees up than the Ertiga in this back seat. You sit a little lower to the ground as well over here. This window line feels a lot higher than in the Ertiga, so not as spacious and airy as the Ertiga's third row. But other than that, you can't recline these seats, so you sort of have a fixed position in the third row here. Also, the Marazzo seats are not as comfortable as the Ertigas as far as cushioning or seat position goes, and the backrest recline angle of the middle row is more limited than the others. Now, with the seat and spacing taken care of, let's look at luggage space. With all seats in place, it's the Ertigas that offers the most luggage room. Hidden recesses under the Ertiga's boot floor also come in handy to keep valuables safely stowed away. The Lodgy and the Marazzo can only hold a few soft bags with all the seats up. All three MPVs let you fold the rearmost seats down to create room for more luggage. But the execution is quite different. Once again, it's the Ertiga that has the slight edge. It's the third row of seats that deftly lower down and sit flush with the boot floor, while the Marazzo and the Lodgy's backrests merely fold down, resulting in a pronounced step in the boot. However, with some effort, you can remove the Lodgy's rearmost seat altogether to create a massive luggage bay. With that, it was time to switch over to the other end of the car, and the place I always like best, behind the wheel. This feels more small and compact than the others from the inside because it's narrower, but I do have seat height adjust to give me a better, more commanding view of the road, and I have to say visibility is really good. The interior now much modern than before in the earlier Ertiga. Lots of layers, textures, colors, and it looks really nice and pleasing to the eye. Of course, you have all the amenities, nice set of dials, the touchscreen infotainment with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And we will get into the full feature comparison in a bit, but let's go to the Lodgy front seat. Here, you sit marginally higher and visibility is good with a large windscreen and low dash, but it just doesn't match up to the other two in interior looks or quality, and it feels a little old. Last but not least, let's take a look at the front seat of the Marazzo. Well, the interior of the Marazzo really feels the most premium of the lot. It looks rich. It has some nice textures like this ebony black. Of course, it has all the features and functions that one wants as well. The gear lever sits sort of across the central console at the bottom of it. And the handbrake is this very aircraft-like lever. Not the most practical, especially if you have the armrest down. And it's a bit awkward to function. I mean, this interior may look really good, but it's not without its quirks. The center storage bay is a full arm's length away, the USB ports are hidden from view, and accessing the side pockets or seat height adjust lever would need really slim hands. Well, with all the inspection done, let's come to the features and which one offers what. We've considered the top spec variants of the three MPVs. With all the practicality addressed, let's find out what they're like on the road. The Lodgy really has a very, very thick steering. For my hands, my fingers just about wrap themselves around it. And it's also the heaviest of the lot. The clutch is also heavy. So driving this around in stop-start conditions isn't the easiest. But where the Lodgy really shines is, in its performance, because whether I'm ambling around like this or whether I want to get a step on it, it just comes alive so easily, this engine. It's got enough performance and it breathes easy whether you're cutting through city traffic or you're out on a nice open stretch of road. The Lodgy definitely doesn't feel like a well-insulated cabin. There's a lot of drumming noise filtering through from the road, especially on a bad section like this. And even as far as the ride quality is concerned, it has a firm edge, so I'm feeling everything that's under the tires. It does also crash through the larger potholes. While the Lodgy's engine may be good on performance, refinement is not one of its strengths. And when we crunched the V-Box numbers, we also found that while the Lodgy is the quickest to the 100, it's the Marazzo that's quickest through the gears. In fact, 30 to 50 kilometers an hour in third, 50 to 70 kilometers in fourth, or 80 to 100 in fifth, the Marazzo is a second quicker than its rivals, which is what makes this engine feel good out in the real world. The Marazzo is quite eager off the line and there's a good linear progression to the power. It's also the most refined engine of the lot. It's nice as a highway cruiser, but it's also equally easy on the lazy driver. I mean, you can amble around in higher gears at lower speeds. Let's slow down. And as long as you're gentle on the throttle, it's fine. But if I press down for an urgent burst of power, then I do require a downshift. And while talking of the gear, although the lever is up high and is short, it still feels like you're maneuvering a longer stalk with a large throw, which is what makes it feel a little more rudimentary than the others. Now, while the Marazzo does have the best power figures, it's also a heavy car and you do feel like you are lugging the extra weight when you try to draw a quick burst of power. But it never feels heavy to drive. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Now, in the Marazzo, you generally feel like you're sitting one floor above the other cars. And this A-pillar and the angle of it does create a bit of a blind spot, but otherwise, visibility is quite good. The steering is really light, clutch is light and easy to use. So, driving it in city traffic is pretty easy. It just looks like a much larger car, but it doesn't feel like it out on the road. The Marazzo does have a good ride for body on frame, and while it does have a certain amount of lumpiness, it's nothing to complain about. With its tall stance, however, it does have a lot more side-to-side movement than the other two, and you may feel that in the back seat. But from behind the wheel, it's a sure-footed MPV that offers up a good amount of confidence. On the whole, though, it's the Ertiga that really offers the best from behind the wheel in that sense. The Ertiga feels really car-like to drive. The nice flat dash gives you a lot of visibility. So, it's very easy to see all ends, especially when you're cutting through traffic and, cars are nipping and zipping around you. It's nimble and easy in the city and feels really well composed at high speeds too. This composure is also felt in its ride quality. Ertiga really has the most pliant, absorbent, low-speed ride. And, even the suspension is the one that works most silently. So comfort levels inside the cabin are really good. And even as you pick up the speed, it has the most flat and composed ride. So if you're asking me which is the cabin to be most comfortable in the back seat in, I definitely say Ertiga. The Ertiga's bonnet is also home to the ubiquitous 1.3-litre DDIS 200 diesel engine. This engine makes 90 HP and 200 Nm, which is not much for an MPV. Now, this engine is not as dead as before. It's definitely got more life, but it still gets going only after about 2000 RPM. And when you push it, it does get vocal. And the fact that it only gets going after about 2000 RPM means in city traffic, and especially when you have to slow down and get a move on again, you really have to work the gears a little bit more than the other cars. True to its name, the Maruti Suzuki Ertiga comes back to the fight with class-leading fuel economy numbers. While the Lodgy has outright performance and the option to convert its cabin into a cargo hold, it has little else than the other two in this fray. The Ertiga and the Marazzo just come across as more modern, premium, and refined products in this comparison. So the fight is really down to these two newcomers. And it's a close fight, with the Marazzo having a roomy and premium cabin, easy to drive character, refined engine, and good performance. But it does have ergonomic issues, and its high center of gravity means that its ride quality loses out to the Ertiga. When you consider that this is a race of practicality, then the Ertiga really comes across as the best. With a combination of space and comfort. The third row is the easiest to be in, the middle row is good on room too, and it offers the most luggage space. That apart, it really drives more like a car than an MPV, and the low floor means that elderly people will find it easier to get into too. Throw in the best fuel economy figures and the price, and it really crosses the finish line in first place with value as well.